Honorary President of YI, Seymour MEP.
Well, I actually had a theme given to me by the guys called The Battle in Brussels, and I apologise if some of the bits I'm going to talk about have been touched upon through this morning. And the fact that Tom's just said that I feel I'm one of the young guys, I am. So I'm just going to touch back to you guys. Do you remember your first day at senior school? That feeling of trepidation as you walk through those giant gates, if there were any, not knowing your way around, who to talk to, who to avoid eye contact with, who's going to try and play a mean trick on you or offer you a genuine helping hand. I'm sure you remember that you were frightened, excited, confused, anxious and nervous, trying to avoid the classroom bullies and determined above all to try and fit in. Well, I can tell you, entering the European Parliament in Brussels on my first day as an MEP was just like going through those same emotions all over again. A maze of corridors, whispered conversations, floor after floor of mysterious offices, and lots of people who seem to know exactly where they are going and what they're doing. A bit like Hogwarts, but without the magic. There's no shortage of bullies at this particular school, people who expect to simply agree with a pro-European point of view and don't see why they should have to be listened to for reasons. There are the show-offs too, career politicians who become so in love with the sound of their own voices, immersed in the EU bureaucracy and cash rewards, that they've forgotten why they were there in the first place. But there are some friendly faces as well. UKIP is part of a group, Europe of Freedom and Direct Democracy in Brussels, which includes fellow MEPs from France, Czech Republic, Latvia, Lithuania, Sweden and Italy. And it's going to be fascinating getting to know our allies from other parts of Europe over the coming months. But I'm not really interested in being the most popular girl in school, in the school playground. UKIP has a job to do, a very important one. These are anxious and troubled times, and our politicians are doing nothing in the face of the dangers growing all around us. There is too much political correctness, which is stifling free speech. There is too much leniency in our legal system. There is far too much uncontrolled immigration from the EU, making it increasingly difficult for our own people to find jobs. People ask, why is our party wanting to be represented at the EU when we are campaigning so strongly for Britain to pull out of it? Well, that's an easy one. Until that triumphant day when the British people are given the opportunity to vote in this unbiased referendum, and it will come, believe me, it is crucial for us to have eyes and ears in Brussels and Strasbourg to see what is being imposed upon the UK. To raise awareness just how far the EU tentacles have reached every part of British life. And to make people realise that almost every day, without any kind of fanfare or fuss, more decision-making powers are being taken away from our country. People need to know the truth and what goes on at the EU, and UKIP MEPs are the only ones prepared to communicate to the British people. Unfortunately, in the EU classroom, most of the other parties are too worried about being hauled into the headmaster's office and sent off to sit in the naughty corner. But not UKIP. We're not frightened to put our hands up and ask the teacher the awkward questions. And like all good school pupils, we do our homework. Since officially taking office last month, I spent hours travelling between West Midlands, Brussels and Strasbourg. We still all find it unpalatable that after a few days in Brussels, at an enormous cost and expense, they move all the office paperwork of staff and MEPs to Strasbourg, and then the next week, back again. One thing is patently clear. The extent of the EU's interference in the British way of life is frankly astounding. They are trying to meddle in absolutely everything. Centuries of our hard-fought democracy way of life is being dismantled, piece by piece. by unelected European commissioners and their officials. They are acting as self-interest dictatorship, as other MEPs are just sitting back and letting them do it. This year's elections have proved that the public has had enough of the three old parties who cannot be trusted by their manifesto pledges. They simply make promises that never materialise. Electors see a corrupt government of MPs who spend more time fiddling their expenses and manipulating the truth that listening to the needs of the ordinary man and woman on the street is impossible. People who will only change the way they vote when they hear and see true, honest individuals stand up for their constituents, not themselves. I represent UKIP with integrity, honesty, straight talking, and a passion which comes from my determination to fight for what is best for the West Midlands and Britain. But back in Brussels, what are we to make of our current headmaster, the EU's newly elected Jean-Claude Juncker? He's a man who insists there's no such thing as European people, and yet he expects us all to unite behind a European flag, linking arms to the European anthem. It's sinister and frankly ridiculous. We do not recognise nor do we respect the EU flag and anthem. That's why UKIP MEPs turned our backs on the anthem when it was played. Beethoven, Ode to Joy. That's what it's called. I do not see much joy in Britain at the way Europe is constantly interfering in our affairs, stopping us from making our own laws and controlling our own borders. Voting in the European Parliament is equally undemocratic. There's no debate, no grown-up exchange of views of important issues, just a long list of proposals drawn up by a group of unelected commissioners, which are passed through as a pass of a button. There goes $1 billion of legislation, no doubt the expense of the UK. Nobody really knows. Push of a button. The staff at Parliament, well, let's call them, for those that remember, school prefects. They're nice enough, but they are cautious too. They know that our aim is to abolish the European Parliament altogether and destroy their jobs. They do their duty, but they can't help feeling that they don't work for the UKIP delegation quite as diligently or thoroughly as they do for the other parties. Our documents seem to be receiving extra scrutiny too. And when it comes to speaking in the chamber, you can barely get minimum time, and even those through gritted teeth with one eye on the stopwatch. But we will not be gagged. And if you haven't seen Nigel Farage's brilliant response to Mr. Juncker appointment yet, check out the YouTube. It's political gold. Or shall I say, epic. And so, our battle in Brussels is twofold. First, against the other parties who want to increase the power of the organisation which pays their ridiculous salaries and expenses. And second, against the bureaucracy of waste and corruption of the European Union itself. Yes, corruption. That word that the EU thinks applies to everyone apart from themselves. I find it laughable that the European Commission wants to investigate every institution but itself. I have refused and has refused sanction an independent investigation into its own affairs. Do commissioners not realise that the EU is beyond a byword, or it's become a byword, for corruption and waste, and that a blinkered approach makes them a laughing stock? After that magical election night in May, UKIP is now the biggest British delegation in the European Parliament, and yet we are still essentially powerless. To make a difference here in the West Midlands and right across England, we must strive to be successful next year in the general election. We must start to attack the major parties where it really hurts. In Westminster, the weapon of mass destruction that only UKIP possesses is the truth. We need strong, well-informed candidates to come forward from our ranks of new and existing members to show that we are a credible force in this countryside. We need to build on concrete foundations which we built in May and local elections to take this party to greater heights. I'm proud to be elected as the UKIP transport spokesman, and I'm looking forward to playing my part at the National Conference in Doncaster next month, where we will be spelling out some of our policies. Watching the Commonwealth Games, we remember there was life, freedom and trade with the world before the political union with Europe. And there is every reason to believe we will return to this happy and prosperous state of affairs again, including Europe. But there's more to UKIP than the campaign to pull us out of the European Union. We're not a one-policy party. We do talk common sense on planning, transport, energy, health, free speech, crime, immigration and our economy. What is HS2, rail link, going to do for the people in West Midlands? Absolutely nothing. Well, that is not strictly true. It is likely to destroy ancient buildings, woodland and thousands of acres of productive farmland, ripping apart villages and the habitat of so many animals. Where's the protection of our countryside and wildlife? This is a vanity project and nothing more. That's why I want to see it abandoned in favour of much needed improvements which benefit our local public transport network. Of course, there is an alternative reason for a strong backing by the government. It is part of the EU's integrated rail project. How many more wind turbines have to be built, some as tall as Big Ben, in our countryside before tourist industry and our skyline is ruined? I am fully behind the party's call to scrap turbine subsidies. The hype about green credentials and these ghastly windmills have been proclaimed far and above the truth, their efficiency and facts. We need to keep our energy-efficient coal power stations online until other cleaner production methods are ready to supply our power. Then there's health. How can large towns in our region find themselves in danger of losing their hospital, accident and emergency departments, major critical services, at a time when our population continues to grow? The number of people in Great Britain is still rising, thanks to our open border immigration policies. So it makes no sense to be contemplating the closure of any departments in any hospitals. The potential closures are in contrast to the real need. We need to be investing money into our National Health Service, helping to fix many of the deficits that we are all experiencing, not taking money and crucial services out. The NHS has prided itself at being free at the point of need, and it needs to be available where and when people need it. The same goes for GP surgeries. I will campaign to see more of them opening in the evenings, making it easier for full-time workers to access them where there is a demand. We do not get sick between Monday to Friday, 9 till 5. Let's engage local people by allowing them to make decisions that matter in their local communities, instead of leaving it to the faceless, disinterested bureaucrats. As we know, Britain is paying 55 million a day, and that's still escalating, for the privilege of being a member of the European Union Privileged Club. That's one hell of a heck of a school dinner bill. You are our future. This is your inheritance. They are spending it right now. Think what you would do for Britain with that money. Certainly helping hard-pressed families who have sought food banks to survive, supporting the elderly who are in real need, putting money back into vital public services, supporting small and medium-sized businesses, maintaining our transport infrastructure, and for those of you in the room, maybe some of you, relieving students of a lifetime debt after universities. On social housing, we see there is a need, but not at the expense of local communities. It must be for them to decide, not planning officials and local authorities who may receive cash incentives to pass unacceptable planning projects. Of course, we all know some of the biggest problems have been in the House of Commons in recent times. The main political parties play ping pong ball with the issues they think they're most likely to win them votes. They hide their actions in smoke and mirrors, trying to sugarcoat them with spin, and communities get caught in the crossfire. But the public now see through them, and it's not to be treated as mindless fools by the so-called three main parties any longer. Anyone who knows Jill Seymour who knows this. I am not someone who will just tell you what I think you want to hear. You no doubt know what I really think, that I will stand or fall by my work I do for the electorate, the campaign hours I put in and the results that I achieve. It's time for politicians to reconnect with the constituent, for voters to feel they can talk to politicians as equals, and to know they are genuine local people representing their interest. The electorate deserves politicians who will walk the walk, not just talk the talk. I'm from a farming background, living most of my life in rural Shropshire. Over the years, I've seen community spirit in helping one another, a respect for the law and each other, a friendship, a trust and honesty. These values now drive my political career. I will never betray the trust the British people have bestowed upon me, nor will I detach from what really matters. I live in the real world. That is what sets UKIP apart from the tired old parties. You and I will see the so-called politicians on Monday bowing their heads and paying lip service to the memory of millions of men and women from the UK and Commonwealth who lost their lives fighting in the First World War. For the very freedoms these politicians are now giving away, piece by piece, to the EU in return for their pieces of silver. I pray that our UKIP People's Army will right the disgraceful wrong and return the honour to our past fallen heroes. So let's start now, further turning the present political establishment on its head by winning Westminster next year. Are you up for the challenge, guys?
Yes.